This is your Friday daily delivery. I am Michael Rand, bonus edition. I think on Monday's show with Patrick Royce, I said no show on Friday. I am a liar. There is a show. It is Friday right now. It's a bonus show, though, because there's no real live content in it. Recorded this a couple days early. Had a good interview with Phil Miller, who covers the Twins for the Star Tribune, and wanted to share that with you. Didn't really fit into any of the other week's episodes, which were all getting long. So much happening right now. So let's run this with Phil, and then I'll add some context after we are done. Happy to be joined today on Daily Delivery by Phil Miller, covers the Twins for the Star Tribune. And admittedly, we haven't talked a ton of Twins since the offseason ended, since the offseason started, since the season ended 6-7 weeks ago. But there hasn't been a ton going on. This is a weird offseason, Phil. We're anticipating some sort of stoppage to everything in about a week as they try to figure out a new labor negotiation. Interesting offseason for the Twins, though, and you had a piece this week on kind of where they stand with their payroll, catching up a little bit on some of their offseason news with, coaching staff, turnover, hires, and whatnot. So maybe let's start with the staff stuff, and we'll get into the payroll stuff here in a minute. But no, they hired a new hitting coach. They've got a bench coach now. What do we think of some of the moves they've made, and from what you and I talked about before we started recording, moves maybe yet to come still too?
Well, it was pretty interesting how young their hires are, considering they already have. I think Rocco is still the youngest manager in the big leagues. If not, he's still in one of the 2 or 3 youngest. And they hired a hitting coach who is 8 years younger than Rocco and younger than a few of the players themselves. And they hired a bench coach who is basically the same age as Rocco and has about the same amount of experience managing in the big leagues as he does. Jace Tingler was an interesting hire, given that he was manager of the team that had the sort of outlook that the Twins had hoped they would have, a team full of prospects, up and coming, going to be an exciting year. It kind of fell flat, and San Diego let him go in order to hire a much more veteran manager. But the Twins added him, and I think that experience is a good fit for Rocco, although Rocco is entering his 4th year as managing the Twins, so I don't know that experience plays into it much anymore. He has that experience. Someone who does not have much experience is David Hopkins, the new hitting coach, taken out of the Dodgers system, where a lot of smart teams are looking for coaching hires. A guy that never got above AA in his own career, but devoted himself to the scientific study, the cutting edge study that all the stat track and all the other radar based information gathering tools bring to teams now. It was interesting when they hired him. Derek Falvey said to me, we got guys coming into the program now after we draft them and from other organizations that say that are used to using all these things in college. Most major colleges have all the analytics stuff that big league teams should have. And he said we wanted to have somebody who can speak that language and can work with them. And there's a new brand of ball player who comes in already used to looking at detailed analytic and video tracking of his swing and making adjustments that way. So it's a couple of interesting hires, and kind of as you alluded to, they're not done making hires.
So what else would they have to add? Because it feels like most of the on-field staff at least seems pretty well sorted out, doesn't it?
It does, and this is another new thing that teams are doing. They are adding to the coaching staff, but these are not on-field coaches. In fact, they are limited to the number of coaches they can have in the dugout. But they've seen how teams like the Dodgers and Giants have additional coaches, as it was described to me, the coaches have a workload. It sometimes doesn't seem like it, but coaches do work with individual players off the field. Now we're adding all the analytics stuff, all the off field before the game, before batting practice starts, and you need somebody to handle that. And they are going to add, I would guess, at least one and maybe a second hitting coach, but one that won't be in the dugout, one that will be on the field for batting practice and working in the cages and going over the videotape and working with players as they work on their swing. It's interesting, all this happened to pitching about 5 years ago when it got down to how you move your wrist and what angle your arm comes at. And now hitters are becoming very aware of the science of their swing, and the Twins are hoping to provide resources so their hitters can have the benefit of that.
Take a playcation to Mystic Lake for 24/7 gaming, fun restaurants and bars, and luxurious hotel rooms. And join Club M to bask in the rewards. Follow the lights to Mystic Lake, where every day is play day.
That seems like a lower budget way to improve from within. But now let's get into some payroll stuff. Interesting what you wrote. Sounds like the payroll could be around $125 million this year. Again, a lot of what gets sorted out in the offseason will have something to do with that, what the economic landscape looks like coming out of this, and coming out of 2 seasons impacted by COVID, certainly 2020 and a little bit of 2021 as well. But as you think about their roster, they've got some payroll flexibility, as we like to say. Josh Donaldson eats up a pretty good chunk of it at $21 million, kind of like Joe Mauer used to back in the good old days of everybody being upset with Mauer's contract. But they're going to have, after they're done paying minimum guys and after they've kind of settled all their arbitration, they're going to have some opportunities to add some impact players. In your estimation, how much do you think they'll do there in free agency in particular, and how big of a pool can they swim in there?
Oh, well, for one thing, I wouldn't discount the fact that they're keeping the payroll the same. It sounds like they are willing to spend at least as much as they spent last year. And you have to remember, this is coming off season 2020 when they didn't sell a ticket, and 2021 when they sold fewer than half as many tickets as they once did when they moved into Target Field. So there was some there's some question about whether or not they were willing to spend to the usual level of payroll. You look at teams like the Reds, teams like the A's have made it pretty clear that they're not willing to spend, that they need to get their profit margins back where they were pre-pandemic. And so I don't know that anyone was expecting the Twins to slash payroll, but honestly, would it have surprised you if they had shot for cutting $20 million or so? Apparently they are not, though. So off we go into free agency. I don't sense that free agency is the route that the Twins are going to go for the most notable players they acquire this offseason. I think they would like to swim in the deep end with some of the better teams in the league. They would like to sign a Max Scherzer. They would like to spend for Kevin Gausman. Robbie Ray just won the Cy Young Award. He's on the market, but I don't know that they think, for one thing, free agent contracts are generally 4, 5, 6 years, and I'm not sure this organization is sold on that being the way to go. Just witness, their trade of Jose Barrios, who immediately signed a 6-year contract. I do think that they are looking for trades. I think that they see their farm system as well stocked with pitching prospects and a few outfield prospects. And I think that that is where they're going to try to spend their money, with some players that are under contract that might maybe don't commit them so far down the line.
That's a good point. And the Barrios thing was interesting, and I was going to bring it up. He signs that long-term deal for close to $20 million a season. And if the Twins go into the market now and do something similar, say they sign someone like a Marcus Stroman or something like that. And again, not say they're going to, and it sounds like that might not be their preferred route, but again, what Barrios's deal, what do you think that says ultimately about what they think of long-term pitching and what they think of Barrios in particular?
Well, it's easy to conflate what they think of him versus what the circumstances were. And honestly, if they had offered, the big question is, if they had offered Jose Barrios this contract in July, would he have accepted it? I'm not sure they would have. I guess the bigger question is do the Twins have a $120 million contract in them? They have never had one for a free agent. Josh Donaldson is the biggest contract they've ever signed for $94 million. $20 million a year for a pitcher they liked, but maybe saw the flaws in. I think it was, I think it was a stretch for them. And I think that is a difficult thing for the fan base to accept, because there are a lot of teams that sign $20 million a pitcher. Well, look at the Blue Jays, who just did, and are willing to lower the expectations for what $20 million brings them. If I was the Twins, I would have made that offer. I get the sense that negotiations with Jose were never specific. They were always, would you be willing to listen? What sort of numbers are you talking about? But there was never a flat contract offer on the table either way. And Jose had an agent and was sold on the idea that he wanted to reach free agency, that's where the money would go. I think when he got to Toronto and realized some of the pitchers who would be on the market next year, realized he liked it in Toronto as well, his position softened a little bit, and he did real well. I don't know if that contract ever would have been signed in Minnesota.
A couple more things for you, Phil. I mean, one reason that I don't think I would have been surprised if they would have slashed or trimmed payroll at least this year is that I'm having a hard time finding a realistic path for them to be really relevant in 2022. It seems like even with money to spend, I mean, yeah, they could hit on 3 or 4 key guys, and maybe that, especially if it's on the pitching side, maybe that changes your outlook. But it's a pretty thin margin I can see right now for them to be contenders in 2022. As you look at it now, I mean, it just doesn't seem like they have enough money to spend to patch all the holes, unless they just, go, hit on 75% as opposed to last year's, 25 to 35% of their moves.
It's counting. Yeah, I think getting to the playoffs this year would depend on 2 at least of their AA pitchers and marginally AAA pitchers getting to the big leagues and having a big impact of bursting onto the scene, even more so than Bailey Ober did, and he kind of established himself as a big league pitcher. I too have a problem seeing a path to it. They are counting on a lot. The Twins talk a lot about how more than a lot of teams, they were affected by the pandemic, how they thought they had this next team on the way, and then nobody played minor league baseball in 2020, and 2021 ended up injury filled. Besides Royce Lewis going down, who they thought would be their shortstop next year, they thought a bunch of their pitchers would have reached AAA and be on the cusp and have maybe established themselves with a month or 2 in the big leagues. All of that was a setback. I believe that they are a year or 2 away from having a good team, but it is all it's all a matter of faith right now. And when I think back to last spring training, as they came out of Fort Myers, I thought they looked about as strong as I had ever seen a Twins team. They seem to have everything ready to fall into place. And in the top of the first inning of the first game, Josh Donaldson got hurt. Later that game, their new closer blew the lead, and it feels like nothing was ever the same for this team.
No, I agree with that. And, maybe underscoring exactly what, the potential and also the pitfalls of 2021, Byron Buxton, when he was on the field, was about as good as anyone in baseball. The problem was he was not on the field nearly enough, sidelined by 2 significant injuries. Maybe the last thing we need to touch on here, Phil, is, we've kind of seen bits and pieces, but there's nothing really new here. It's Byron Buxton's got 1 year left on his contract. It's either going to cost them a fair amount to extend him, or it's going to bring them a fair amount of haul in return if they wind up trading him. I guess door number 3 is you pay him for 1 more year and let him walk, but that doesn't seem really appealing to either side, I would think. Maybe the Buxton side, I don't know. But how do you see that piece of this playing out over the winter?
I think that the decision is made now. I think the decision is made in December. It will. One interesting side note: it will be interesting to see how if the work stoppage, which seems likely, if it affects teams. Will they be sitting around? Does it give the Twins time to work up a Buxton trade, even though no transactions can take place? It will be interesting, but I do think that Byron Buxton is such a valuable commodity. He's the kind of superstar that in another sport like NBA basketball, he's the kind of guy that every team is trying to get. And it doesn't make much sense to let those guys go, but it makes even less sense to let them go for nothing. I think the Twins found out that by trading Nelson Cruz, by trading Jose Barrios, they like what they got back. They think they have some good building blocks back. I think that encourages them that they can get a lot back for a Byron Buxton, for a team that is willing to offer him. It seems obvious now, a 9-figure contract, which is a big risk for a team like the Twins to put on a guy that only plays about half the time throughout his career. If it were up to me, I would take the risk, but it's not my money. I do think that the Twins are going to conclude that he's too valuable to risk putting on the market at the trade deadline next year, to risk, because he could be hurt, he could have a bad season, to risk letting him walk away for nothing. I think they will convince themselves that the smart move is to get as much as you can for him, and the time to do that is now.
So you feel like instead of an extension, we're talking about, this is the most likely scenario, I guess, in your mind, is that they trade him this offseason? That's kind of what it sounds like. You're in a roundabout way. That's what you're getting to.
That's my guess. That is my guess as to what they will do. I don't doubt that they will take one more run at signing him to a contract, at seeing if there's a parameter to a contract that he will accept. But coming off the year he had last year, and Byron is always very confident that he is going to stay healthy. He always seems surprised when he gets injured. I do believe that he and his agent figure the best route to maximize his value is to become a free agent, and I don't think the Twins can risk that. Well,
it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. It's an interesting offseason as well. Good catching up with you, Phil Miller. Appreciate that, and let's do this again soon, okay?
Let's do it, Mike. Thanks.
So Phil and I obviously covered a lot of ground there. What we didn't get into were some of the particulars of what the Twins players currently on the roster are set to make in 2022, which is pretty interesting. He mentioned Josh Donaldson, highest paid player, easily making twice as much as anybody else on the roster, set to make $21 million in 2022. Next highest paid player, Miguel Sano at $9.25 million. Max Kepler at 6.75, Jorge Polanco 5.5, Kenta Maeda making $3 million, Randy Dobnak and Jake Cave each making $800,000. That is it for the guaranteed money. However, arbitration eligible players, you imagine a lot of these players will be back. Byron Buxton estimated at $7.3 million in arbitration, Taylor Rogers $6.7 million, Tyler Duffy $3.7 million, Mitch Garver $3.1 million, and then a whole bunch of other players right around $1 million, including Caleb Thielbar and Juan Minaya. Luis Arias, utility player, coming in at around $2 million. So add it all up, you've got about $47 million in guaranteed money, another $27 million in arbitration, and another $5 or $6 million if you got to fill out the roster at least with major league minimum guys. That would give you another $5 or $6 million. So total projected payroll right now around $80 million, which gives them, like Phil said, if they're going to approach the $125 million that they did a year ago, gives them a good $45 million to spend on the free agent market. And obviously, that number expands a little bit depending on what could happen in a Byron Buxton trade. If you're not bringing back major league ready talent in that's extra money you could perhaps spend next season. If there is any kind of Josh Donaldson trade, that frees up a lot more money depending on how much you get back and how much you might have to eat of that $21 million contract. So a lot of moving parts for the Twins this season, not the least of which being what happens with Major League Baseball and the collective bargaining agreement, what happens with this potential work stoppage coming up that everybody believes is looming in less than a week now. But as you can see from those figures, there's definitely room to maneuver. And if it was up to me, quite honestly, I know it's a risk, but if they're going to dabble, especially in the pitching market, I would rather see them use a lot of money on one guy than spread it over two or three okay guys. Like, I feel like the risk reward is greater in that scenario, but the chance of having a high impact goes way up if you are able to do that. Fill out the fringes of the rotation with other, maybe more cost-effective moves, whether those are trades. Phil referenced the Jake Odorizzi route where they're able to get Jake Odorizzi in a trade a few years back, and that worked out very well for them. If they're able to hit on something like that, but don't try to kind of piece it together with these $8 to $10 million a year guys that probably won't give you a whole lot of bang for the buck and that could be, pretty well easily replaced by lower cost players. If you're going to take a swing in free agency, try to take the biggest swing possible and put that money into something that could be a home run and not just a series of infield singles, if we're going to use analogies. So that is my 2 cents on how they should spend what could be about $50 million. That'll do it for the week and this show. Hope everybody had a great Thanksgiving. Some stuff I'm looking forward to over the weekend. Definitely Gophers versus Wisconsin on Saturday, and definitely Vikings against 49ers on Sunday. Two very big football games. Implications in both of those that will have pretty far-reaching effects on the seasons for both the Gophers and the Vikings. I'll be interested to see how those games play out. Have a great weekend, you guys. We'll be back at it with Patrick Royce on Monday.